one true podcast talking Baylor and Big 12 college football. Alongside me, as always, I'm going to point the other direction this week because even though you're on my screen the other way, I think on the real screen you're over there. So maybe I pointed at you right. But John Werner with me as always, and our special treat this week, Jerry Hill. From the Baylor-Bear Insider. Jerry was at the Trib for 25 years. John and I worked with him, and now has been the editor, publisher, I don't know, Baylor-Bear Insider since 2008. So, Jerry, welcome.
Thanks, guys. Good to be back together with my compadres.
Yes.
We've spent a few days and years together, so.
Yes, we have.
I'd like to say this is kind of a big deal getting Jerry on.
I should have had that mug in the background. It was like kind of a big deal. So, yeah, this is cool.
Yeah. Well, and we were just talking about it, but Jerry was, we think, on the original podcast. We don't know how long it's been. Maybe Win Emmons can look that up for us, but early 2000s, we think. So,
yeah, I remember doing it, John. It was up in that little conference room or whatever outside of the old editor's office.
Oh, yeah.
And we had some interesting podcasts back in the day when
we
nobody even knew what podcasts were.
Right.
They were on the cutting edge of podcast.
I think that's pretty much the description everybody would give to you and I, John, is that we're cutting edge journalists.
Pretty much, yeah.
For sure. Oh, yeah. Well, let's dive in. So Baylor, guys, it was a sluggish start to that game against TCU and much more rapid finish. But it wasn't enough to take down the Frogs. TCU won that game 33-23. So in my column on Sunday, I contended that there are some reasons why Baylor is sitting here at 1-3, and they've been a little inconsistent. In your minds, what are some of those reasons? I mean, and would you agree with that? Jerry, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, you look at particularly these last three games, it's been pretty much the same story. It's really been both sides, but predominantly the offense. The offense just has not been able to get off to good starts, and then finally click, late in the game, either late third quarter, fourth quarter, and that's, like I said, that's been kind of the same case at West Virginia, at Texas, and then certainly this past week against TCU. And added to the TCU deal was the defense. It did not play well, particularly that first half. But it's hard to understand. Obviously, there's been some issues with the pandemic, and I look too, Brice. I don't know all the points you brought up in the story, but I had seen a deal on Facebook where somebody talked about what have they done to my 11-win team, now that they're 1-3. Well, a lot of your 11-win team is actually playing in the NFL. I looked up the other day, and Henry Black's playing for the Packers, and JaMychal Hasty is scoring a touchdown for the 49ers. So there's some of that. And then obviously, just the in and out with the offensive line. I think that's been a big deal, is that this will actually be the first week where you've had the same five guys in that offensive line in back-to-back games. So I think that's a big deal, just getting those guys reps and getting those guys used to who's to my left, who's to my right, how do they work together. So I think those are probably some of the big things.
Johnny?
Yeah, I think this team really could have used some spring practice. You can really tell that offensively, they just don't really have a great plan. I think they're just kind of throwing stuff out there right now, seeing what sticks. Like Jerry mentioned, the lack of continuity in the offensive line has really hurt them. COVID's hit that group pretty hard. They've had to change from week to week. There really has been no commitment to the running game. Baylor's last in the Big 12, 92 yards rushing per game, 2.8 yards per carry. So, they need a better running game. They need to protect Charlie much better, although they protect him pretty well against Texas, did not protect him well against TCU. But he's also got to throw more accurately too. he missed quite a few open receivers against the Frogs. So yeah, that offense still needs a lot of work.
Yeah, and I think you both hit on some points I made in my column, but to me, just to echo what John said about spring drills, I don't think you can overstate the importance of spring drills to a first year coaching staff. Because when you're coming in, I mean, that's the time you get to know your players. That's the time you start implementing your system. And I'm sorry, you just can't do that over Zoom all the time. I mean, so I feel like that, again, John has said it in a column. I'm not sure you can judge anyone on 2020. And certainly I don't think you should judge Dave Aranda on this year, but those are some of the reasons that I think the Bears have, struggled a little bit. And it doesn't get any easier with the schedule this week. So we've all been to Ames, and it can get a little rowdy there. We've experienced that. Fans like to tailgate, but here in 2020, there are limitations on that. So my question is this: does that benefit the Bears?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, they've got an incredible tailgate situation there. I mean, it just seems like you're walking like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of yards through tailgaters and, sausage and ribs and,
So you're fat and happy by the time you get to the press box.
Well, yeah. Not only that, I've also gone to Hickory Park.
Sure, yeah.
So
barbecue and some ice cream.
I'm feeling pretty stuffed. But yeah, I think that will make some difference. I mean, that no matter how good their teams are, those are really passionate fans. And I interviewed Dylan Doyle this week. He's from Iowa. He went to Iowa State for 2 years. His dad was the strength coach there.
Went to Iowa.
Yeah, at Iowa, University of Iowa.
Yeah.
But, he's been to Jack Trice many times. And, there are no NFL teams in Iowa. The two big things are Iowa and Iowa State. And fans are just really passionate about football, college football in that state. And so, yeah, I think it'll be a bit of a different atmosphere.
Yeah, Brice, I remember being up there, and actually several times, but I just remember in particular one year where it just didn't look like there was going to be anybody in the stadium because I'd gotten there pretty early. There's nobody literally in the seats, like 30 minutes before the game, and then whoosh, like everybody goes and it fills up. So yeah, they love their tailgating. They love the Cyclones, and they really get into it. I do think they're probably just about the most passionate fans. I think back to the Nebraska was that way too,
and A&M.
Right. And it's in a place, Nebraska and Iowa State, where there is no pro teams like you mentioned, John. And I think that does make a difference in those places. And yeah, certainly, if you're not having to hear, 50,000, as opposed to maybe 10,000, I think it could make a big difference in the game. But again, it's kind of what you're used to now. I mean, they have yet to play. I mean, I guess Austin was the biggest crowd that they've played in front of. So I think by this point, you kind of get used to it. But certainly it helps that you're not going to have those fans, yelling in your ear and stuff.
Yeah, it certainly mutes the atmosphere a little bit. And I guess you guys saw that in Morgantown as well. Now, Baylor was not able to take a win home there, but we'll see on Saturday. It's a really good Iowa State team. I mean, it's going to be a challenge for sure. So Jerry, you've covered Baylor football for how many years now?
So my streak goes back to 88, 383 consecutive games.
Yeah.
Actually started covering them, the beat, in 87.
Okay.
So, and then even, and John will remember back in 83 when I first came to Waco, we would go to games if we weren't watching Chris Everett playing tennis. So, but yeah, so yeah, a little while I've been covering them.
Yeah. And if my counting is right, I think that's 9 different head coaches, including Jim Grobe for a year.
Grandpa Jim, yeah.
Yeah. So just what's your overall impression of the new guy, Dave Aranda?
Well, certainly a big contrast between him and Matt. Matt was a guy that just, he kind of brought that passion, was very, emotional. And but I think there were times, though, when he would kind of talk in cliches. Dave is he's very intellectual. It's not what you typically get with a football coach. I mean, I'm not trying to disparage that profession, but you don't usually get those guys that are so cerebral, and he is. And I appreciate the part, just, from a media perspective or whatever, even from a fan, of him explaining things. Now, there are times where I'm like, no, what did he just say? But I do think he does a good job of explaining it, X's and O's and some of that stuff, and talking with his hands. That's why I'm doing this. So, I appreciate that part of him. And, obviously we're just 4 games in, and like you've said, it's hard to judge Dave on this year, but I think he's a guy that can get it done. It's just going to take some time, but like I said, I appreciate his honesty, his explanations, and obviously he's a defensive whiz. So I've been very impressed with him, as well as his staff. I mean, you guys, I think we've talked about it, but Larry Fedora on the offensive side, Ron Roberts on the defensive side, Joe Wickline is one of the best offensive line coaches in America. So he put some pieces together that you wouldn't think a first-year head coach could do. So that part really impressed me from the start.
I'm with you on some of the football jargon that he gets into. It can be a little like,
whoa,
and incidentally, you got a lot of headroom in your shot right there, so there's a lot of things going over your head. But
here we go.
And that's Jerry. That's Jerry sitting on 3 phone books too. Right.
That's how I started driving, bro.
That is how I started driving. I had to look through the steering wheel, so I had to raise up. So.
Oh, I couldn't resist.
Oh, I love you, Brice.
So, as far as the Big 12 as a whole, guys, it's been a dog-eat-dog season, a very parity-filled season. These teams have kind of cannibalized each other week after week. So, as we head into this first weekend in November, the conference has 0 teams in the top 10 in the country in the AP poll, and no undefeated teams left. I think those things kind of go in hand in hand. Texas knocked off Oklahoma State last week. That was the conference's last unbeaten team. So if you're guessing today, I'm not asking you to bet, because this is a Baptist podcast. At least 2 of the 3 guys on here are. But what's your best guess as to who ends up in that Big 12 championship game? Jerry?
Wow. And I was actually just looking at like who everybody had left. I think overall Oklahoma State has a pretty favorable schedule the rest of the way. Obviously they have Oklahoma, but I think other than that, they've got a pretty, not easy path, but I think they've got maybe the best path with only having 1 loss so far. So I would think Oklahoma State gets in there, and particularly they've already beaten Iowa State, and they've got Kansas State this week. So I would say Oklahoma State, and then after that, that's rough. But it's hard to vote against Oklahoma just because they've been there every year. But you would like to see somebody else in it this year. But I would think maybe Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma would probably be my second choice right now.
Which wouldn't that be like Bedlam 1 week and the Big 12 championship game the next?
They're actually playing pretty soon here. I think maybe in the next couple of weeks. So it wouldn't be back to back, which they did. I think they did have that one of those years that they literally played back to back weeks. So hopefully, you wouldn't have that. But right now, I do think it's wide open. I think with everybody having at least 1 loss, hey, Baylor's only 2 games out of first. I think it could be anybody in that championship game.
Johnny?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. I still like Oklahoma State's defense, even though they lost to Texas last week. I wasn't too shocked by that. I actually picked Texas because that series is so weird. Oklahoma State often wins in Austin and vice versa. Texas will win in Stillwater. But I like them. OU's really starting to play pretty well now. They had 48 points at halftime against Tech last week and kind of eased off the gas a little. But yeah, I like those two. I just think Texas, they're just too erratic, too unpredictable. I mean, Ellinger's great, but their defense isn't very good, really. And yeah, I think it's going to be Bedlam too.
I think Oklahoma State and Kansas State, that the winner of that game this week certainly has the inside track, because now you have one loss in the league, and you've beaten a couple of pretty good teams already they're fighting for that spot. Oklahoma could win out and still not make it with 2 losses already. But I am with you guys. The Sooners are starting to look like the Sooners again. But if I'm picking today, I'm just going to go Oklahoma State, Iowa State, and that would be a weird, because we're used to seeing OU in it, but things change, and, it is 2020. So, so finally, we always like to finish with kind of a little fun question, and I thought this one would be fun considering our special guest. But those of you who follow Jerry Hill on Twitter at View from Hill, or whatever social media he's also on, have probably been exposed to his dancing prowess. Or we might say lack thereof. I'm not, I don't know if you're ready for So You Think You Can Dance, or, Dancing with the Stars. But so, Jerry, we won't ask you to recreate any of your moves here on One True Podcast, but
and my wife appreciates that.
Yeah, I know. I've heard you say she's not a fan. I mean,
she's not a fan at all.
Yeah. How did that start? And what's the one that, what's the video that sort of gained the most traction?
What started in not the best of years, but 2016, actually, in Grandpa Jim's one season here. We were at Rice, and it was not planned. It was very impromptu. And I think I'd gone out during halftime to do something with Elliott Coffee, and it kind of stemmed from something there. But then, we wound up doing the victory dance after that game, and it started the tradition and just kind of built from there. And I guess the one, and I can't even remember specifically what game it was, but Holly Rowe was here, and she either retweeted or maybe even commented on it, and there were over 40,000 views. So that one was unbelievable. So, but now,
if you'd have known that, you would have danced better for that one.
I did not bring my A game, but that one got like 40,000 views. So it was amazing. And of course, I'll give you some props, man. That acrobatics and tumbling national championship, when Brice is in the background doing the cartwhils, I mean, that one got a lot of traction, I will say.
We had promised Coach Fee that we would do it, and I told her I would do a cartwheel in the background. So yeah, Jerry was dancing, I was tumbling.
That brought a different element to the game, and that was pretty fun. Now, I also did one. I don't even remember what it was for, but I did the Dirty Dancing scene where she jumps in. I don't even remember what it was for, but I did it with Matt Johnson, our ticket guy, and I jumped into his arms. So that one may have been I think that may have been my jump the shark moment.
Yeah. If I had this right, I think Holly compared your dancing to Elaine on Simon.
Yes, she did.
Ouch. Wow. I haven't seen Holly busting out any moves on Twitter.
I resemble that remark.
Well, so
Oh,
is
man.
it still a tradition?
No, I've put the kibosh on it for now. We may break it out, special moment, but right now we've got it on hold. So may wait for a national championship or something. But yeah, I know there's a lot of people out there calling for it.
Oh, yeah.
I got my fan base that are just crying for it. They need the Jerry Hill victory dance, but
Right.
right now it's on hold.
Gotcha. Well,
My wife says thank you. So
Hey, Jerry, tell them the Scott Drew story in the restaurant.
oh my gosh, that was so funny. So my wife and I think we were having our anniversary dinner, and Scott, I didn't know it, but Scott and his family were at the next table. And this guy comes over to our table and says, "Hey, aren't you that Jerry Hill guy that dances in the videos and stuff?" And I mean, I thought he was serious. As we know, I think I'm kind of a big deal. So I thought it was a real deal, but it was Scott playing a trick on me. So yeah, so we got our pictures made together with the Drew and the Hill families.
that's awesome.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I bet there are people out there that are just fans of your dancing,
I get the comments and stuff. I don't understand it, but yeah, I do get comments saying, "Where's the dance?" or "Love the dance." Some people say other things.
Well, it's
Alan
fun.
Lefevre likes to give me a hard time that he could dance better than me. So and he's only got one hand. So
oh my gosh.
oh yeah,
We're off the rails, but
yes, we are.
yeah, you guys have fun in Ames this weekend.
Yeah.
It should be nice weather, it looks like, right?
Yeah, it looks like about 70 at kickoff, sunny.
Yeah. So,
Much different from 2018.
yeah, little colder then. What was the temp that day?
What was it, like 10, 15, Jerry?
It was like, I think it was wasn't it the coldest road game? Maybe the coldest game period in like a long time. So
Yeah.
it was. I knew that was the one where Taylor had done some research. I even called Mr. Dave that day to check with him on a couple of things. So yeah, that one was brutal.
Yeah, it was bone chill. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see if it's a nicer result for the Bears. But Jerry, thanks for hopping on with us and having some fun, and we always appreciate it.
You got it. Thanks, guys. Enjoyed it.
Bye, Jelly.
See you, boys.